Alrighty, we'll call this meeting to order at 6:30, Monday, April 11th, regular school board meeting here at the library. Let's first stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty, so I guess first order of business is to approve this agenda. Is there a motion to do so? Second. We have some students here, is that right?
It's just me. Were we first? Am I first?
Well, we were going to maybe bundle the CBS, it's not a reorganization, the CBS celebration 12A up to a student presentation.
But there's no students. So.
We can bundle it whenever you want.
We'll just keep it as it is. All right, if no other changes or additions to the agenda, all those in favor of approving, please say aye.
Aye.
Are we next looking for a motion to approve the minutes for March 28th?
Second.
Questions, discussion, correction of those minutes?
The minutes say that we're having a meeting tonight, informational meeting, the 11th, not the 12th. I thought I saw that again.
It did say that.
Yeah.
It's right here.
Yeah.
So it should be.
It was under agenda building. Oh, yeah.
Oh, the agenda building, no, we were going to talk about the informational meeting on it as well.
But it said budget revote April 13th and informational meeting the 11th.
Okay, yeah, so that's.
Yeah.
Any other errors or omissions, discussion on those minutes? Alrighty, all those in favor of approving with the slight correction brought up by Rick, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so Phil, I guess you are the student presentation. What do you got?
Hey. Somewhere you want me to stand, Chris?
Yeah, I'm just fine if you want. Everybody. Yeah, it's good.
So I'm sorry I don't have any members of Student Voice with me here tonight, but I bring a message from them. I'll talk about Student Voice quickly, and then I'll tell you what the message is. So Student Voice is our student leadership group at Castle Village School. This year we have representation from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, which is great. Nicole Rice started at CVS 2 years ago, and it's still running strong. And one of their roles is in planning celebrations. So when we earn a celebration at school, generally do things that they have told us they'd like to do. And they are planning a big celebration, and that's what this message tonight is. So members of the board and members of the community, you are cordially invited to join us June 9th with a rain date of June 13th. From 4:30 to 6:30, outdoors at the Castle Village School campus. Student Voice is planning a commemoration celebration, is what they're calling it, to honor Castle Village School and to acknowledge the fact that it is closing. So these students have planned a school-wide scavenger hunt, or are in the process of planning, I should say. A school-wide scavenger hunt. They're going to build and fill a time capsule. There's going to be a history walk for everyone to participate in, which will be all of the students at CBS and their different Odyssey groups, which is like our advisory. We'll be creating different displays of different parts of the history of Castle Village School, the building itself and the school. And then they'll be decorating the building, and there's also going to be a DJ. So this is in conjunction with our celebration of learning, which every school in the district does towards the end of the year, kind of show off what we've been doing all year. The Castle and Village schools will also include these other pieces as a commemoration to the school. So you're all invited, and the Student Voice group hopes to see you there.
What time is it?
4:30 to 6:30, June 9. rain date of the 13th.
Want to forward something out in email? Would you mind?
Yeah, I think there's gonna be written information going out too.
Yeah, and I can send it all out along with all the graduation dates times at the end of the year.
Yeah, we just
So-
thought you'd be able to remember now.
So I'll take care of that this week.
That's what I got, Tim.
You don't have anything further down under 12A? This is what you got tonight? Okay. Well, I just had a couple questions for you. I'm just curious, Phil, do you need anything else from this board in terms of support or outreach or idea, brainstorming type things to, I guess, celebrate Castleton Village School to a level that you and your staff feel is appropriate?
That's a great question. I think our approach was kind of to see what the students' ideas were. So they presented us with all of their ideas. The 5 I talked about were sort of the 5 that rose to the top for us as being great things. The staff's going to be involved in helping the students to build that history walk. So certainly if there's more ideas from the board of things we could do, should do, we'd be happy to hear those. I think in terms of the planning, a lot of that work will be done by students, as it should be. And yeah.
I remember we had a board meeting at Castleton Village School in December, and I think Mr. Matties was there with the student. He had just talked about maybe involving some former staff or community members to be part of that celebration. And the discussion I had with Ms. Chansky, she had kind of echoed the same sentiments. So I'm just curious, is there any outreach plan with the former staff of CVS to be part of this?
Yeah, we've had those discussions, and I think, leaning on some of those more senior staff members like Mr. DeMattis and Ms. Chansky to help us figure out folks that might be interested in coming to that. There's been quite a few names thrown out there. So the idea is that those Odyssey groups are also going to work on getting those invitations out to folks like Linda Doltier, who was a principal there for quite some time, Joanne, who was there in the front office for quite some time. And there is sort of a list where we're building on folks who might be able to attend. But certainly, again, if the board has any ideas of who those folks might be, people might have thought of welcoming any, however we can get.
The original elementary. So you're talking to Scott.
So I can commit to being there June 9th. I'm sure Castleton and maybe a couple of the Hubbardson reps certainly would be with that in attendance, and other towns too. I mean, this isn't a unified district now, so it's not just a Castleton or Hubbardson issue. When it comes to certainly a deal like this, stuff goes in schools, so I encourage everybody to participate. All right, any other questions for Phil? Thanks, Phil.
Thank you.
All right, public comment. Is there anyone here in person tonight first? Who is a member of the public with a comment they'd like to share? Corner there, you can't see. No, we're good. All righty, is there anyone online attending virtually who has a comment? Please unmute and identify yourself and what's your comment? Okay, moving along to our committees. Tonight, the Finance Committee met beforehand. I'll ask the Chair, Glenn, to give us a summary.
Yes, so the Finance Committee met. Unfortunately, I was stuck partway here and was on the phone going in and out. But briefly, there was, Cheryl kind of went over the results of the audit and moment, we'll touch on that again, as well as the budget presentation. And that was really the bulk of it. That was pretty much, that was it. And a lot of warrant signing. So at this stage, I would make a motion that we pay the warrants in the amount of $4,142,901.83.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed?
Okay, I'd make a motion, that we pay, the capital reserve, $84,724.25.
I'm just curious what that was for. Was it one item or just a bunch of items?
Find that for you. It's either related to, it's related to our project.
Probably architectural fees, I would think, engineering fees,
The-
lack of a design. Yep.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving, please say aye. Opposed?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to pay the food service bills in the amount of $43,763.55.
Second.
Questions, discussion, food service?
I noticed that we were extending it, right? 22, 23.
The legislature had recommended it, but last I heard that the governor.
Thanks. I also saw that they might use some of that surplus.
Right, yeah, right, but that's what the governor was talking about. I'll break it down. I don't know. I changed.
Any questions on food service? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? None.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for approve grant payments in the amount of $412,867.31.
Questions or discussion, grants? Hearing nothing, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we pay the high school student activity account in the amount of $15,030.50.
Questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed?
And I would make the motion that we pay the elementary student activities account in the amount of $9,294.76.
Questions or discussion on elementary student activity? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed?
Okay, so I think at this time, maybe we're going to need a motion to approve the audit, correct?
To accept the
To
audit.
accept the audit.
Fiscal, the FY21 audit.
So I will go ahead and make the motion that we accept the audit, and then Cheryl can answer any questions or make the points that she would like to make.
Any questions about accepting the audit? I know Cheryl did summarize that in her central office report, unmodified opinion, internal controls good, no comments.
Unqualified. Available on our website. And right, and I think, and actually, I want to make sure. Finance committee would credit to the entire central office, administrative team, and the business office staff, because the unqualified opinion reflects the work that they all do and everybody does all year round to follow our procedures and processing and things according to our grant awards, our other state and federal. Get ready to start all over again. For fiscal 22.
Thank you.
All right, so there's a motion, a second. If there's no other discussion or questions on accepting the audit report, all those in favor of doing so, please say aye. Opposed?
And then the last thing is the budget presentation. I guess Cheryl or Brooke would like to speak to that. It has been shortened for tomorrow night, so.
So, I believe Cheryl sent you two presentations. It's the shortened version. And I think, Tim, you're going to present tomorrow night.
Sure.
They're both on the website too. They've both been on the
So
website.
certainly if somebody's interested in some of the aspects of the longer presentation, we can quickly bring that up. But, the shorter presentation just has their, facts.
Cheryl, no new information provided by the state in terms of finalizing moves or anything like that, or objections or changing politics?
Yes. I didn't change any. So the only change is the reduction in the budget.
Thank you. And let's just be clear on that reduction. So it's $33,700, which was taken out because that was determined 3-5. Taken out, determined to be what we initially had in there to support operations at CBS. I know there was a question on Front Porch Forum from Wayne Burleson about just that. And his point was that, was it not previously disclosed or discussed that the operating costs at Castleton Village School were a much larger number, like in excess?
70,000.
So the disconnect there is, I thought it cost 170, and we're taking out.
It does if people are in the building.
Okay.
Well, there was never a plan to have people in the building this next year, so we only budgeted 33,000. So regardless of the outcome of the vote in Castleton and Coverton, we still were students. So it was to keep the heat at a bare minimum and electricity at a bare minimum. We were anticipating it cost about $33,000. 170,000 is if the building had people in it, and
And there was like the facilities.
there was somebody,
Person there.
facilities person, right?
Just pointed out utilities. So, I mean, when we were talking about the school and what it costs to operate it, that's what it costs basically to operate the building, but that's not what we were going to budget.
Because we were trying to give a number to the Castleton and Coverton, who requested a number to operate the building, $170,000.
Insurance.
But we were not planning to really operate the building next year, regardless. But if we still retained ownership, you'd have to keep the heat on at some level or the electricity. So it was a bare minimum.
Well, basically utilities.
Yep.
Limited.
10% or 10,000 of it is water, non-water.
Yes. Christina.
Did anyone respond to that person? Yes, it was
Okay.
responded to last week.
So speaking of people putting stuff on Front Porch Forum, we shared at the finance meeting, any other questions we heard out in the committee, out in the community that maybe people had come so we could be prepared tomorrow night? Has anybody else heard any questions that you might want to be prepared about or that we should be thinking about before the presentation? We heard some people are coming to ask about curriculum. We heard people are coming to ask about test scores. So we're kind of like, it allows us to prepare a little bit too. So I didn't know if anybody else on the board has heard anything about any questions. You've done such a good job of it.
I do have to say a lot of people have called on
Pretty simple, same questions over and over again.
No, there are a variety of different ones. Yeah. And a lot of them I made sure was in the frequently, a lot of them I put in the frequently asked questions document too that went out. So.
And that's on the website, right?
That's on the website. It went out on social media too, several different times. So. Thank you.
So what's the closing line here? I mean, I think I've seen the visual reminders at least Castleton schools. What what's the plan here to finish the deal over the last couple of
The
days?
principals are sending out robocalls to parents. I mean, we've had stories in every single paper. There's been 2 different flyers, a longer version of the flyer and a postcard. Flyers.
Most people I talk to know it's going to come here. It's out there. People have to know.
Yeah.
Whether they're going to vote or not, I don't know.
It went out, they were headed off to report another one of the Orwell podcasts. And so I asked Andy about putting it on there, so he made a mention, just encouraging people to vote. And they've been having like 1,000 listeners, so people know it. And I know in Orwell on the town green for the school, there's a sandwich board out there for people.
There's a sign in front of every school. And principals have been communicating it with parents regularly. Yeah.
All right, so I guess with that, is there anything else finance related before we move on from finance meeting? Action? All right, so tomorrow night here at
6:30.
6:30. Thanks, Glenn. All right, so next is central office report. Questions for the administrators?
And I would just say that my questions for the administrators, but with regard to my report, if anybody is aware of any preschool children of eligible age, we do still have some space openings at each of the program sites. And I brought extra brochures here if anybody wants to take any, but certainly would love to have a few more little ones join us in the fall. So enrollment is, or registration is happening now. So if you know of anybody who's interested, you can just send them my way.
Is it rolling admissions, like basically like up until it's filled?
Yeah, and they can register at any point. They have to be 3 by September 1st in order to be age eligible. But if they are 3, 4, or 5 years of age by September 1st and they're not yet enrolled in kindergarten, they are eligible for the 10 hours a week of pre-K. Yeah.
All right, I had a couple questions. This one, I guess we'll start with Casey. You had noted in your write-up, Casey, just the behavior. It seems to be circling back to some more positive trends in terms of the referrals and write-ups. Perhaps you can just elaborate on that a little bit in a short summary.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd say I don't collect too much of that information at the building level, so I may have to go out and my principal colleagues to help maybe speak to how it is things shifted. I just thought it was important to note as I asked for that information through the system that we monitor those referrals that I share out. When we had started in November, we were quite concerned with what we had seen at the start of the school year. And by this point, it seems to be on par with what we'd experienced in the past. So I don't know if I have any, specific response to what caused that to change, other than it may just have taken some time to settle into what it was the expectation was going to be for a school year based on what we thought it was going to be when we left that previous spring. We had spent a summer not being masked. We had spent a summer thinking about how did teaching and learning and practices in the classroom would be closer to what we'd experienced pre-pandemic. And that was a quick shift from it's going to be back to masks. And remember, we had talk of which reached 80%. And that seemed to really move from our site as we recognized what the school year was going to become. So I would really say it would be a credit to the administrators, the teachers in the schools and the students to be able to, kind of reset expectations and then be able to kind of move as we would have in a typical year in terms of expectations in classrooms and that sort of thing. I don't know if anyone had any specifics, but thanks for bringing it up. That was something that I think is a highlight in the celebration that folks were able to manage those expectations. I know there was some sadness when we were still wearing masks, but I think it allowed us to maybe reset our focus on what we were here for in that teaching and learning world.
All right, then I was gonna just ask you, Brooke, you had mentioned in your write-up there about, just the large number of elementary vacancies, and just curious if there's any further thoughts you have just about how the hiring season is going thus far, filling positions, or do people leave? What's the latest on the challenges with our staffing?
I would say there's a lot of transitions taking place, and I mean, that are not unique just to our school district. We see a large number of educators either moving to the state or moving to other parts of the state. So it seems to typically be because of family circumstances. They, are leaving Lake Valley or any of the surrounding districts. So we do not have resignations for all of those, but those are the ones that we are anticipating. 10 is a lot. We do not have a real robust hiring pool at all, but we do have some candidates that, not for elementary positions tonight, but for one's for elementary, but we do have some new hires tonight that we're hoping we will approve. But yes, it's going to be a difficult hiring season, and we're not going to be alone in that. So certainly the fact that we don't have a teacher's contract is extremely concerning. That just adds to the uncertainty.
The candidates bring that up when they inquire about the job?
Yep, well, we do discuss it because when I'm offering them a salary, I'm offering them this year's salary. I can't offer them what the salary would be had we had a settled contract. So it is difficult, and it could mean, that someone takes a job in, a neighboring district that has a settled contract because they know what they'll be making. So that is difficult. And I also think our staff doesn't necessarily all see letters of intent as contracts. So it creates some possible, just more instability in the system. We are also seeing, we do have, again, this is a universal problem, a statewide problem. We are having difficulty with also teachers becoming fully licensed. But again, this is a statewide issue that I know the Standards Board is addressing. We have educators that are having difficulty passing the praxis exam. That's something that we've been working on. And again, it isn't unique to us, but it's a real concern. So we do have teachers that are currently hired that can't pass the praxis, and their temporary license expires in June. So that could lead to more vacancies, but again, not unique to State Valley. It's a statewide problem.
We also have right now about 11 instructional assistant positions open. Some available immediately, some moving into next year, but currently have 11 TBHs in next year's budget.
So I think, we're going to have to see how this plays out over the next month or so, but there may have to be decisions about moving teachers to other buildings or combining grade levels in some cases if you don't have enough staff. And that's a real possibility.
That's the biggest challenge for education that coming up, right? Julie, I think we're going to talk over the summer about programming and budget and making investments and how we can make our students better. I know the strategic committee met last week. These are great ideas, but if we can't find the staff
you've got to have the capacity.
We don't have the capacity to undertake those initiatives.
And I would say statewide, you're going to see you're seeing a huge turnover in central office and building-based leaders too, and I'm talking to colleagues. They're not able to fill some of those positions either. So there's some real instability in the workforce in education. That certainly is making, it a challenge. I do think we're better off than most, but certainly it's only gotten worse from last year to this year. So not better, unfortunately.
Will the state, I know the state's aware of it, what are they thinking of any way to
Yeah. Well, actually, that's part of the conversation. The state, I mean, is saying that there needs to be further consolidation. We can't support the number of schools we have with the workforce.
So their answer is to consolidate, not to attract teachers.
Well, they're looking at a number of things. They're also looking at creating more waivers for the praxis exam and some other loopholes and extending. I think they're going to extend the expiration date for licensure as long as, I mean, this hasn't been publicly announced yet, but like till October 31st, but it's not a secret. So, you know, and they're looking at possibly passing some legislation so that once a teacher retires after 6 months, they can come back in the workforce for a year and collect their retirement and their full teacher salary for 1 year. But
What about on the other end, incentivizing people to get into the teaching field?
I haven't heard much about that. I mean, the other issue that we're having and many of our neighbors are having is even if we try to hire somebody from out of state, there's no place for them to live that's affordable. And so we're having real challenges around that. We have lost educators because of that.
To work.
Correct. And so that's been a real challenge. Some school districts are looking at buying their own property for housing. Not that, you know, we want to get into the landlord business.
Yeah, how many apartments do you think CBS?
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, but housing's a real concern, and it's a real concern in this area. We definitely have lost educators from out of state because they can't have it. But that's affordable.
Or then the commute into that, the commute's too long.
Right.
You find something that you're driving at.
Right, and with the price of gas and everything else, so I think a lot of people are reevaluating. And I expect this to be the case for a while. This isn't going to fix itself in a year or two. This is going to be an ongoing issue. People are not going into education.
Well, that was a question that I had. You know, I don't know if there's a way of finding out, but like, how many of the people who are going to be graduating from classes this year or that graduated over the last couple of years actually, you know, that were education majors actually went into education. I mean, I know that there were some who actually were Fairhaven students, graduated from Castleton and want nothing to do with teaching, and they just went elsewhere. They took their 4-year degree and they're not going to use it at all.
Education is facing similar challenges like law enforcement and healthcare right now. It's the political nature of that education, you know, the polarization that has impacted education over the last several years is something that people just feel is not okay, right or wrong. So I think we have a lot to overcome in our profession.
I mean, I know certainly during the earlier parts of COVID, there were a fair number of educators that just left the profession.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we saw a lot of folks retire that, or if they had young families, leave their profession. And the other issue is childcare. Childcare is very difficult for people to find and to actually, you know, make it worthwhile to be working. We're possibly going to lose a couple of educators with that issue coming as well. So, yeah, there's some real issues.
I still think, I mean, it's not only here, I mean, everywhere, teachers that are better salary.
And I don't know, I mean.
Schools, much as they do, just salary. You got one here starting at $44.
And I'm not sure, and principals can certainly chime in, but I'm not sure it's just about salary. I think it's about respect and the community respecting the profession. That's something that I think has changed in the last decade tremendously. So,
I won't disagree about that.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Saying that. I just think overall, teachers get paid a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like we always get everybody always better. Like a lot of taxpayers say, why are you paying teachers so much? Why are you doing this to teachers? And a lot of people always
like you said, disrespect or put teachers down, when really we should be putting teachers up and paying them for what they're supposed to do, what they do. Not supposed to be, but for what they are doing. The majority of it. It's just. And yeah, I've seen the way teachers can be treated just since the 10 years my son wasn't.
Alrighty, any other questions or discussion points for the administrators? Alrighty, so we'll move off central office report and into correspondence. There was one letter from Captain Phillips regarding project graduation. So we're looking for some information on that.
And I did not donate to it last year. We haven't, but the year before you donated $900. And I believe if my memory serves me well, that was because that's what all the different boards used to, when we had individual boards used to donate something, and I think $900 was the full amount of all of those donations. So I think that's why it's 900. It seems a little random, yeah, but that's why.
So Ben or Kate, I mean, Jackie summarized it in her memo, but it's not school sponsored?
No, run by the parents.
All right, well,
Need a motion?
yeah, before the motions, then I wouldn't mind seeing that increase. These kids have been out, without a graduation or a regular graduation for a couple of years now.
I will say they have done.
Unsanctioned party, right?
Well, there was no project grad party. There was no money, because there was no money was raised. They didn't have the funds to have a party last year.
And
So
they're in a similar position of not having a ton of funds because of COVID. They haven't raised when they.
Go to motion or no?
where's the money coming from? Do we have it in that line item? What do we have to, what is it? To be
Usually in your.
Is there
Well, there's a school board, area for budget. Yes, you do. You have board members, the board member vacancies, we budget for full board members, so you've got.
Yeah, you have.
Easily have.
Savings
Line there.
I'm the lawyer. So I have-
So have the money. Not just curious.
Yeah. Here, 4 boards already.
Yeah.
With the motion.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? The $1,500 recommendation for project graduation? Nothing further. All those in favor of donating $1,500 to the project graduation efforts, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Middle school transition presentation.
Or you want to try three? Yeah. There you go. Think about this.
So Ben and
So, yeah.
Kate, yeah, they're here to lead us through this.
Yeah, and I'm kind of here to support Kate. She goes through this, so I'm assuming feel free to stop us with any questions as we go.
Yeah. So thanks, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk to you as a board about all of the fantastic things that the team has done so far this winter and spring. So I have some items I'm going to run through. If at any point you have questions, feel free to jump in. And anyone else, Ben, Margaret, if you want to add anything, feel free to jump in. Then I'll open it up for questions at the end. So just wanted to give you an overview of the team to make sure you know who's on the team. We have our Fairhaven Union Middle and High School leadership team, myself, Ben, Margaret, and Gwen will be joining us after July 1. Our 7th grade core team is comprised of Archie Clark, Helen Alexander, Liz Volpe, and Justin Merrill. Our 8th grade core team is Will DeFrancesco, Chris Thomas, and Kevin Eddy, and Michelle Egan. And just a note on the compositions of the team, one of the things that we thought was really important is that students coming from different sending schools had at least one teacher that they knew, regardless of which team they were going on. So that was a big factor in how those teams were formed. Special education, Tara Briggs will be working primarily with the 7th grade team, Dale Coombs with the 8th graders, and we also have Megan Sullivan working in our middle school own program. For counseling and student support, Kim Ezzo will be our school counselor, Amy Jackson will be our full-time school-based clinician. We have Andrew Lebeck joining us as a student support coach, kind of providing some in-the-moment behavior and social emotional supports, and also pushing into classrooms to help support teachers if students are having a rough day. Abriana Wood will be the clinician in the middle school alt program, and we're also lucky to have Laura Budd with us as a school-based clinician for 1.5 days a week. She will spend the other 3.5 days at Benson. Specials, we have Sam Adams for music and band, Kristen Partisi, visual arts in the middle school and also in the high school, Kristen Harris for chorus, and we are happy to have Gina Chang joining us to spearhead our digital arts program in both the middle and high school. Continuing on, we have Deb Eller Hansen, our librarian. She will also be teaching a class for 7th graders called Real, which is rigorous, experiential, authentic learning linked to life. So I'll talk a little bit more about that when we go over the schedule. Jason McKean for special education, Ashley Sanborn, world language in 8th grade, and Eric Anderson for health. Throughout this process, we're seeking leaders for our middle school team. We asked for applicants and did interviews and selected Archie Clark and Michelle Egan. They have started to do some work this spring to help us prepare for next year, but they'll be really an integral part of the work next year, leading their team common planning time, as well as some other initiatives. This spring, we're really working on our handbook, some guiding documents for curriculum and advisory, and looking at things like lifetime activities, how we can have celebrations, and also more community engagement. And Michelle is actually online tonight, so I'm going to just turn it over to her for a minute or two so she can speak to some of these items.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm really excited about this new possibility and opportunity to kind of lead Slate Valley into this new era of having our district middle school. One thing that we've been spending a lot of time on, like Kate mentioned, is really spending a lot of time looking at how our advisory will operate. So advisory is like a teacher advisory. So it's really the backbone of the middle school model. It's really important for adolescents to build relationships, to feel like they're part of a community. Advisory also gives them opportunity to really work on social emotional learning. And another opportunity that happens with advisory is you can really integrate some restorative practices and get the students working on kind of tier 1 circles where they, you really discuss issues that are important to them, that are important to adolescents, helping them, make good choices and transition at this point in their life. Advisory is especially important now that, that all of these students will be moving from their sending schools. He's back, sorry. Will be moving from their sending schools to, to be a part of a, 80 to 90 student team. And it's really important that, so each student can feel seen, that they have an adult that they connect with, that they can go to. And actually just today, Kate and Archie and I created themes for each month. We have a lot of really exciting things that we're going to build into our advisory system next year. The other thing I just wanted to briefly talk about is our plan for integration. At a district middle school, we'll have core teams of teachers who will be able to work together through our common planning time. And so our plan is, starting in the fall, to build ideas and generate units that we can actually implement. Kate and Archie and I have already discussed maybe in January, kind of doing an experiential, maybe project-based unit with the students. So really taking advantage of the fact that each team will have, you know, their core teachers who, and so we'll really kind of create our own community. And does anyone have any questions, or do you want to wait till the end, Kate?
I think we can wait till the end. That was great, Michelle. Thank you.
Okay.
So just to give you an overview of the work that these teachers have done since January, we did have an in-service on January 26th where we really just made sure everyone knew each other. Some of these teachers have worked with each other closely for a number of years. Others really only knew some folks through in-services. And we thought it was really important to make sure that we have a strong team moving forward that can work well together and pick some areas of focus for our middle school work. On March 9th, we had transition meetings for students that are on IEPs, 504, and EST plans to really see what their areas of need were at the middle school level now, what are some supports we need to make sure we have in place for next year, but, you know, importantly as well, making sure we know what our students' strengths are so that if there are things that are working well, we can continue it in our new configuration. March 17th and 18th were also in-service days, more team building. We also looked at curriculum and our KUDs, which is what we want students to know, understand, and do so that we can make sure we're moving forward with common curriculum on the teams. May 4th is another in-service day. We'll be reviewing some guiding documents to kind of fine-tune some things for next year. On May 13th, the counselors, clinicians, and psychologists will be meeting with Chris Benway and I to really plan social emotional supports for students that need them next year to make sure we know what we can offer students on tier 1, 2, and 3 for next year. And then at the end of the school year, June 20th through the 23rd, we have some in-service days built in as well to help people physically transition their stuff from one building to another, but also finalize some work so everybody feels good to go for the fall. There will also be a team of teachers that are working over the summer who want to continue some of this work. Their focuses will be on finalizing some interdisciplinary units. We're also trying to design a 2-week experience to start the school year to really build the team, and also finding new ways to integrate social emotional learning into everything that we do. Through the work this winter and spring, we have had a few major decisions that were made. One of those was to loop students, so they will be with the same teachers through 7th and 8th grade. At its core, we thought this decision really helped us enact the vision of Slate Valley, which is education that's rigorous, authentic, experiential, and individualized. If you talk to teachers, one of the things that can sometimes take a long time is getting to know your students well enough and figure out how they work best. And sometimes you get to know them very well, and then a couple months later, they're moving on to someone new. So we really thought that to capitalize on these relationships and the communities that are built, we'll have students stick with those teams for 2 years. So this kind of gives you an overview of the schedule for 7th and 8th graders. The schedules are pretty similar, just really one main difference. Students will have their 4 core classes every day for 50 minutes. In 7th grade, students will have an alternating PE and REAL period every other day. REAL will just give students a chance to explore topics that are interesting to them, do some community service, and some projects to help bring those to life. And it'll also work in some media literacy and research skills as well. They will also have a specials rotation, so they'll have the same special every day for 9 weeks and then move on to the next one. And those are health, visual arts, digital arts, and music. We have a lunch and inquiry block in the middle of the day, so students will have lunch and then a chance for callback or to get what they need from their teachers. It will also be when they can access band and chorus. And then we have a dedicated advisory at the end of the day. And so really that looks pretty similar for 8th grade. The biggest difference is that 8th graders will have PE and world language every other day instead of PE and real. Just to give you an overview of some of the communication that's happened so far, we had our step up night in February, which if you were there, it was incredibly well attended and positive. The turnout with families and students was great. We had a packed gym. We followed that up with a letter to families. We have 3 middle school family forums that are happening. The first was online in March. The next will be in April, and the last one will be in May. Just last week, the administrative team visited all of the sending schools, and it was fantastic to meet with the current 6th and 7th graders. I don't know if you want to speak to some of that.
Everybody now has the first ever made middle school, Slater middle school t-shirts.
Yes.
Which was really exciting. The kids loved it. They were putting them on, trying them out, and it was really fun. And so we kind of ran through a lot of similar things with the students, just talking about here's what your middle school experience is going to look like, and then opened it up to questions they had. And there was just a number of really thoughtful questions the students had. Some that we had answers to, some that we had to tell them, these are the things that we're working on right now. So it was a great experience, a great chance to meet all the students.
Yeah, and they were very excited to meet us and to be Slaters next year and think about what that's going to be like. We also have a step-up day in May and an ice cream social in our last forum. So this is some of the same information, but just with more specific dates. May 24th for the social and the move-up day. And also looking at our summer prep program for incoming 8th graders. That's July 18th through the 22nd. And then for the 7th graders, July 25th through the 29th. And I would just really encourage any board members that are able to make these events to really do so. I think it's exciting and encouraging for families to see you there and to know that we're all in this together and excited about it. And we'll have free ice cream on the 24th. So.
I'll send those dates out to you too with all the.
Okay.
Oh.
That's the
Yeah. Flavors TBD. So we'll get back to you on that.
All those dates.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've been putting out reminders on the website as they're coming out. Any questions?
I got a question. I'm last part middle school summer prep.
Yep.
The kids are required to go those weeks.
They're not required to. They're strongly encouraged.
Traditionally, we've always done this as high school prep for incoming 9th graders. And I would say that traditionally it's been about 80% attendance. So it's been really well attended. Sometimes you have students that might come just for part of it because they have family vacations. But by and large, students are attending and enjoying themselves, and it has a really great reputation moving forward. So I would expect probably to maintain that at roughly 80% attendance. Sorry.
So you're doing that for 8th and 7th grade.
We're doing it. So for this presentation, we just were talking with the middle school, but we're doing it for all. So incoming 9th will be the first week,
right,
and then incoming 8th and incoming 7th.
So after this year, will it just be for incoming 7th graders, or will you still do something for 9th?
No, I would foresee that it's probably just be incoming 7th graders. Because I think we could really build in transitions with the 8th graders here. We could build the transitions during the end of the school year really easily. Okay.
I had a couple questions. I'll ask one right now. Can you give me a couple examples? You talked about programming and class schedules. Can you give me a couple examples of programming, of programs that we'll be able to offer next year in the combined model that we currently cannot offer on an individual school basis? What's the value added? Give me two examples.
The two things that come to my mind, and Ben, feel free to step in. I think having 2 teams with 4 core teachers each just gives us a better opportunity to provide a consistent experience for students. And the other piece that I think a lot about is the opportunity to have integrated experience. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to plan this spring and summer is how can we bring different areas of content and curriculum together so that it's more well-rounded and it's something that's real for students, particularly looking at areas like ELA and social studies, math and science. But we're even planning some units that will incorporate all 4 of the core content areas as well as the specials.
I would say also logistically, we're looking at the algebra class for 8th graders that's always been offered. And I think there's been struggles with the way it's been offered through UTVLC, now being offered in person with a teacher here. And Casey, you can correct me, but I think that has usually started off anywhere from 18 to 20 students and tends to whittle down because it's such a tough program to go through virtually. So I would see that as being a much more successful program. The addition of a second art teacher, so now we have a, as our current art teacher calls it, we have the messy arts with paint and drawing, and then we've got the digital arts, which is going to be a new program that we're really excited about. So those are a couple, and I think there's a few more, but those are kind of the nuts and bolts of some of the additional courses we're able to offer. And I would add maybe, after school activities, maybe not varsity sports so much, but sometimes there's not quite enough students involved in a specific club or activity after school. And so I think those are some that we're not even entirely sure what those interests might be. But I'm sure as you continue to travel around, you might be able to have different sorts of activities after school that we don't currently have in all of our schools. And there was a lot of student conversation about that when we were talking, just looking at clubs and student interests and how we build off of what they are, with what they would like to get involved with. And, from our perspective, of course, looking at it from the adult perspective, which is the more extracurriculars, more involvement we have, the better the attendance, the better the participation in the academics. So I think that's going to be building that really robust extracurricular program is going to be essential to improving everything academically in the school as well.
Oh, world language.
So world language in terms of how it's changed?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I can't speak to every sending school because I think it's a little bit different. I know at CVS it was offered 7th and 8th, and obviously we're looking at it just being offered 8th. I don't know if that's the case in all schools. I think some it was 7, 8, some it was maybe just 8. So yeah, we are limited with that. What we're looking at and what we're exploring with the teachers here now is, are we going to do sort of an all-inclusive cultural studies? Are we going to break it up into part year Spanish, part year French? We would like to see the opportunity to kind of balance. What we see at the high school now is a really Spanish heavy, largely because Spanish is what's offered at the middle school. There's no French option. So students oftentimes come with 2 years under the belt and don't want to make that switch to French. So I would predict that we're going to probably see that balance out over the next 2 to 3 years as well.
And how about planning time for the 2 teams? Like, will they have crossover common planning time so that they're able to look at like math PLCs, for example, not just in their cohort of a team?
Yeah, the common planning time they have right now is just with that team. The other team has a different period in the day where they have it, but that's one of the things we're trying to focus on for our after school time, is how we can bring them together and make sure that we're kind of moving in sync.
Yeah, and the plan for after school at this point is to have 3 faculty meetings through the month. So 1 specifically for the high school, 1 specifically for the middle school. and then a full faculty that we'll probably utilize to have more of that team breakout. Yeah.
That was my next question.
Yep. And I think considering the early release days too, I know we had some conversations last week about how those now look much different for middle school staff than it had as part of being a K-8 and then travel time and that sort of thing. So I think that also factors into the math PLC versus the team structure. So quite a lot of opportunity, I think. That's great.
Well, I would just, when you met with the students, were the students that are going to be part of this, were they really excited about it? Was there some apprehension or?
I would say the students, by and large, were genuinely excited.
Yeah.
I think we did have a few students ask questions about, well, am I going to have at least one friend in my classes? Are we going to move as a group? That came up a couple of times. Are kids from Fairhaven grade just going to move together? So we talked about meeting new people. But by and large, I think they were genuinely excited, and I don't think it was just because of the teachers. So.
So I'm assuming Spanish is going away in the lower school.
Yes.
I had another question too. And I guess I'll say, do you feel that our current 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are ready for this kind of transition? I mean, certainly I think this age is the kids, boys and girls, go through totally get a change in their lives, physically, emotionally, the whole bit. And, middle school in the respective schools has always kind of given them that buffer, that safety of making the transition to the high school. And for a lot of these current 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, this natural transition has been abbreviated, suspended, delayed because of COVID over the last 2 years. So I'm just wondering, are the kids ready, or is there a scenario where we've got 6th, 7th, and 8th graders now who are just not really up to where they would normally be? And then there's kind of a gap, and then we've got the big high school kids. I mean,
Who also
true, yes, true.
are not ready.
So I'm just, what's your take on this?
My take is that I think the sending schools have done an excellent job of working within their systems, especially their current advisory systems, to really help students process what this is going to look like and address the questions that can be addressed. I will say, like I said, there's a lot of excitement. I think there are also some students that are nervous, and that's natural. And we try to talk about, what it is that causes that nervousness. Is it just that there's a lot of unknowns, or are there a couple of specific questions that we can address? I will say, I think there's a lot of students that are really ready to branch out and kind of have some room to grow and some room to get to know other people. Some students have been with the same small group of kids for the last 6, 7 years, however long it's been. So I think it's a combination. I think by and large they're ready, and I think our middle school team is really ready to meet them where they're at when they get here.
I would add to one of the advantages that we do have in this transition is we have teachers moving from the sending schools with students. That typically doesn't happen. Usually you have an identified middle school and the students are the only ones moving. So in terms of considering a set of years that have been non-traditional, so is our creating this structure within that same timeline. So I think it is a benefit to us in helping that support.
So are you guys going to work with the other end as well, like the high schoolers, on what it means to have a middle school? Because, I mean, I know you guys don't want to toot your own horn, but the high school has I think right now has a really great culture and a really great feel and respect. And like, I enjoy walking through the hallways. Kids say hi, they're respectful, they look you in the eye. I don't see anything crazy going on. Like, they're all just really, the kids just move along, they're polite to each other. So, but they're going to also have a change. So you guys are working with the high schoolers to talk to them about what it means to have a middle school in their kind of backyard now?
That's a really good point. And to be honest, we really haven't. And I think it's something that high schoolers are aware of. There's a lot of conversations with the construction of like, so what is this space going to be next year? And us having conversations about, well, it's going to be a space that you're not going in really. So, but I think, you know, we've had some conversations about having, and I think about this especially around clubs, having clubs at maybe 7, 12 clubs, having clubs at maybe exclusively high school, exclusively middle school, and some that can really have mentoring capabilities. So I think of student council and student voice is a great example. That's essentially like a junior student council, and being able to have these separate, but at the same time being able to bring them together at certain times of the year as a mentoring program, I think is going to be something that really benefits the high school students.
We on the line have questions about the middle school transition? All right, well, this is great discussion. Thank you all for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
And we need to have more of these conversations here throughout the spring as some of the things change. Certainly invite all board members to continue to be involved and to ask the questions and to hold these people accountable, because this is a really big, important move for our school and our district, and for the parents out there as well. And this is your chance too to be involved. Then you guys are having a few more sessions, virtual, in person, these transitionary sessions. Parents are always welcome to call in and ask questions and express their concerns. It's best to do that now as opposed to just sending your kid to school on the first day and then complaining about it later. So be part of the process and change.
Mostly your question also has a question from somebody else, right? And I don't know, Brooke, if you mentioned that you're doing that kind of column in the free press, is it the free press?
Yes.
Yes. So it's a good place too, if you have a middle school question, ask, because it gives us the opportunity to share with all the other parents who are probably thinking the exact thing. Absolutely.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Alrighty, guess we've got some contracts and some resignations. Do you have the updated list? I have it right here.
Right. So I would like to make a motion to accept letters of intent for Grayson Peters. LOI.
Letter of intent.
Anything. Letter of intent, Orwell Village School 6th grade teacher, the 44-9 that Peter alluded to. Gina Chang. Gina, thank you. LOI, Fairhaven Union Middle High School digital arts teacher, $57,250. And Cheryl Didwitsky, workplace entrepreneurship teacher, $67,530.
Second. Questions or discussion on those new hires?
I have a question. Could you talk a little bit about the entrepreneurship workplace position?
Check.
Yeah.
So Kate, Ben, and I didn't have as much luck as we had hoped a year ago trying to fill that position. So then thought differently. At the time, we had advertised it as really a work-based learning position. So it was making certain that work placements that happen out in the community had the appropriate supervision and paperwork that had been completed for that. And so thought really a bit about how it is we could market our abilities to attract someone to that position, and thought about it in a bit about collaborating with area businesses and kind of working on projects that they might not have time to work on always. And so we're prepared, and I think Cheryl is on the call, the woman who's accepting the position. Oh, that's okay. I'm sure she doesn't mind too much. So Ben, Kate and I and Margaret were able to interview for that position, and he was the individual that we chose for that position. And so we communicated over the weekend about how we were kind of envisioning things and how she might envision things as she's coming to us. And there's Cheryl, she's popped on. And so our hopes are to do these two pieces. One part being creating those on-ramps for students to go out into the community and really have work placement where they can do apprenticeships, job shadowing, internships, but then also having these projects and times where they might be exposed to different employers, but while they're potentially 9th or 10th graders, or maybe even 11th grader, around these topics of workplace readiness, as well as what does it mean to be an entrepreneur, and how does that fit with who you are and what your interests are. And so it's exciting, but it is something we're doing for the first time in this way. So Cheryl and I are planning to try to find some time next week, potentially, or the week after, to connect on her ideas and what we've discussed. And I think you may have seen it in Brooke's superintendent part of our central office report, that we're actually having a breakfast on April 28th.
Yep.
And so we've already started to kind of reach out to these folks that we've had relationships with in the past. Part of my goal is to talk about this new role that we have. As well, we're going to discuss kind of what is it that we're looking for as part of our strategic plan, and that kind of graduate.
Certainly, if any of you are interested in coming to that meeting, partners with us, feel free.
Yeah. So
just let me know to make sure I have food.
Is it here at the high school?
It's here at the high school at 8 o'clock.
So developing those relationships with the community, will there also be like classroom type settings that,
yes.
or is it individually based?
No, it's classroom. Yeah.
Okay.
So, students are registering for the course. And so it looks like, as best we've been able to sort it out at this point, kind of a morning that would be more classroom based with virtual or on-site visits. And then that afternoon, Cheryl might be out kind of checking in with employers where students are already placed. So that first part is kind of more of a classroom type situation, whereas that afternoon is more students that are out in the community doing different activities. And you can earn a variety of types of credits, from elective to with flexible pathways and some of the legislation that was passed. If you find students that are interested in moving in certain directions to try to earn content area credit, Cheryl might be involved with that, as well as Kate and Ben, and kind of a content area expert at the high school. So it really has this potential to kind of take us in a lot of different directions. Hopefully Cheryl's not too intimidated with everything that I just said, because I did make certain to recognize who's there in case she was feeling like this was too much.
One last question.
Sure.
Is this also a position that will continue throughout the summer, like helping students with job placement or internships or something throughout the summer?
That's a great thought. Yeah, I mean, that isn't anything right now that we have thought about in terms of this upcoming summer, but I think it makes great sense to try to figure out what that would look like going into the summer. Clearly, that would be in addition to, the teaching contract. So we would have to make certain that we have funds available to be able to support those efforts. But that's a need as well, right? It's one thing to do during the school year, and then it's another thing to have, this huge break. And what am I supposed to do, or what can I do?
Well, I have to say, this is in response to Act 77, which is fantastic. I think it's pushed us as a district to kind of think outside of our walls right here as to how we belong to this greater community. But if we want to set ourselves apart in Western Rutland County, there's no other high school I know that has anything like this happen in this county. So this is a really unique opportunity, I think, that we've developed to really show what we can do to really be a part. And I mean, Rutland County is our county, right? Like, we're talking Rutland areas, we're talking, Benson and Orwell, all the businesses that kind of float around here that sometimes I didn't even know the finding sites existed until like 3 years ago. So it's like, how do you even know what's in your own county? You know what I'm saying? Or what's in your own area until you start forging these relationships and getting kids involved in some of these things. I think this is a really great position, Cheryl. I'm excited for you to develop this and work with this. You've got Casey to bounce ideas off.
Thank you. I'm very excited to join Slate Valley, so thank you.
Are you looking to partner with some businesses or?
Yeah,
Because,
they're.
Collins Aerospace would love to start a like pre-manufacturing program at some schools so that when kids graduate, they have knowledge of how to work in some of these factory type settings. And that's, that stuff's all high tech.
Yeah.
And they've been knocking on doors looking for partners to do something with because they can't find help. So they're trying to get people into that kind of stuff still in school and where they would transition right to a job the day they graduate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be interested for sure. And actually, if there's any community partners, I mean, I can come you up the list, be invited, but if there's others you can think of, let me know, and we'll send them invites to the breakfast on the 28th.
So, I mean, just specifically, the bonding site was mentioned. Hubbard Forge is another that we've spent a lot of time over the past 3 years trying to develop what is that relationship and how can it serve a variety of students. I think both businesses or operations span the spectrum from needing all sorts of credentials in industry to lawn maintenance. And so really wanting to not inundate small businesses with constant calls, but really, in order to do things well the first time, focus on a few specific places, learn as best we can about what works and what doesn't work, from transportation to safety to oversight. I mean, there's so much that goes in if we can try to move this beyond what we're talking about at this point. It has a great amount of opportunity, and when you talk about the application of what you learn in a classroom, I think these are those ways that we can show our students in our community that we're looking towards applying what it is we're discussing in the classroom.
And coupled with all of this, on May 4th, right, is our high school's first ever career fair, and how many different companies do you have coming? It's huge, huh?
I think it's going to fill the whole track.
Yeah, it's huge, the number of companies that have responded and are.
There's a list right out there as you walk.
Yeah,
out.
employers that will be there. So I can send you the invite to that as well, because that's also part of the celebration of Learning Day, right? It's about the same day. So, so I can send you all that information. So super excited about that. And Kate and the guidance office have done a tremendous amount of work in setting that up. So.
Is that for like high school seniors or just anyone?
We're opening it up to everybody.
Yeah, it's gonna be for everyone.
Yeah.
We want students to get exposed to.
Yeah. So very, very excited about that.
And thinking about the middle school, which was a previous conversation, I don't think it's ever too early to kind of explore what it is you think you might want to do, and then learn that that's not at all anything that you want to do. So it is neat to think about these opportunities we just spoke of, and then again, what that looks like, and having students on a campus where, sometimes the travel inhibited our ability to do some of that. So I think that's, again, a down the road sort of piece.
All right, so we're in the midst of a motion here about approving these letters of intent. Nothing further. All those in favor of approving, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, now we have some resignations.
Yep. So I make a motion to accept resignations for James Graham, Heston Village School Spanish teacher, Bill Pacano, thank you, Pacano, Craven Grade School 3rd grade teacher, and Eileen Lusenkus. Thank you, Fairhaven Grade School 4th grade teacher.
Is there any questions on the resignations? I would just encourage, I know we've talked about this in the past, and in these cases here, the reasons for leaving are pretty evident, but whenever there's an opportunity to get information via some sort of exit interview about what we can do better, that would always be beneficial.
We send them an exit interview form when they resign. So.
All right. Nothing further. All those in favor of approving the resignations, please say aye. Anyone opposed? All right, so now we're moving on to CBS, and this is specific to the request from the town manager, Michael Jones, about providing funding for the school next year, the operating costs. I guess, Brooke, why don't you just catch us up with correspondence that you received from Mike?
Yeah, so the email was in the board packet. My understanding is the town did not budget. The towns did not budget for the operating costs of the village school, should they take ownership, and so they're asking the school district to continue to pay operating costs. However, we've taken that out of our budget, and we don't have a budget right now. So, my response to Mike was basically that we took those costs out of our budget, and we don't have a budget. So I thought it was unlikely, but however, the request was made to the board, so I'm bringing it to you to consider.
Can you just speak to the timeline of transfer? Because I mean, if this should drag on and it's, you know, the middle of fall, then technically we would still be responsible for.
Yeah, and you know, and I can tell you that that could definitely happen. We have to give the school district has to give the towns of Castleton and Hubbardton a reasonable amount of time. I think we need to consult with our attorney about what a reasonable amount of time is. My intent would be to transfer the property on July 1st. However, my understanding is Castleton and Hubbardton have not come to their mutual agreement yet on how they're going to take ownership of the building. So that is, you know, that is a sticky wicket, but I'm not sure, you know, going a year is a reasonable amount of time. And so if it isn't a reasonable amount of time, then the school district could turn around and just sell the building if we have transferred ownership. It is our belief, but again, we need to follow up with our attorney more on that. So they don't have an indefinite amount of time to make this decision and make this transfer.
And they can't purposefully delay the process to avoid paying these operating costs. What if they say, we're ready to go, guys, let's sign the dotted line? Why don't we just wait until December?
I mean, I again would want to talk with our attorney about that. I believe the article, I have to go back and look at what the article was on their ballot, but I believe it's said something about keeping ownership on July 1st, but I don't remember exactly. So if in fact it does, I'd have to go back and look at that. So yes, there are things that we definitely need to legally work out. Could we be stuck with some costs? Yeah.
All right, does anyone have any anything to add to the discussion that Brooke should relate to the town manager? I can make a motion.
Oh.
Only if I think you're agreeing to pay it.
Yeah.
So unless you're gonna motion to agree.
They have a budget, we don't have a budget, we just get out of the budget.
Correct. I agree.
Hope that we don't get stuck paying it.
How long have they known that this was? Over a year.
So we started for budget and had something in there.
So yeah, I agree with the response. I was kind of taken back by the boldness of the request and then given the circumstances. But I guess I would just caution too that we are a partner student segment, so we continue need to work in good faith. All right, so you're good there?
Yeah.
Other business?
I got one thing. Oh, we have an organization called Women Safe. We're doing presentations.
There may have been a fundraiser.
There have been some Wednesday presentations in the past. I know some of that can get well.
What's their presentation? What are they belonging or supporting here?
I'm not sure the context of the one that you're talking about right now. The one I was involved in was several years ago at Orwell, and it had to do with personal safety. and just well-being of young adults, boundaries, those kinds of things, boundaries, relationships.
Now that you mention it, I think they come in as some part of the health presentation that they can be contracted with. I think Women's Safe is at
Addison
Middleburg. And so I think they worked at Orwell. I'm not certain if I've heard about them work with them.
I'm not familiar with them doing anything.
And so I'm imagining, as Chris said, it
Did you
was
see
about
what, did you,
safety.
yeah, let me know what their
Yeah, I don't, is Pat
presentation's about, or?
I'll find out.
Yeah, Women's Safe comes to our school every year and does exactly what Chris Benway was describing.
What is it?
It was around relationships and boundaries.
It's part of the health. It's part of the health. It's part of our health class. They come every year and they work with students on boundaries, personal space, being safe, right and wrong, those kinds of things.
Because Karen talked to me about it. I'll go ahead.
I am just speaking to when I was up in Addison County Schools, and they did come into all of our schools, and it was around audit and child abuse prevention and recognizing the signs and symptoms of child abuse. So I don't know if that's what they're doing in Orwell, but I just that they did for our schools up in Addison and contracted services like giving it together. And they sent letters from the parents before and sharing, presenting and stuff.
And that happened up in Orwell?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let them know what they're doing.
Yep.
And that act went in state law, so it shouldn't just be Orwell. My estimation should be right. And all those people were
certainly. I mean,
yeah. I don't know if I'm sorry. I realized that Rick just asked about that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be critical. I just meant no. And it should be that all students are getting right.
Yeah.
We've been working with Women's Safe for the past 6 years, I'd say.
Well, the grant that contacted me about it said that they were emphasizing pronouns for people, for kids, and addressing the he, she, whatever.
I can't speak to that specific item. I'm not aware of that. But that's relatively new for us in the district.
Rick? Yeah.
Devin Furna, you're here tonight. You're feeling better. I just want to congratulate you and recognize you again for your Middle School Principal of the Year award with the BPA. So. Superintendent Evaluation, I had reached out. The wheels are turning. Rick, you need to respond to me on a date that
any day.
Any day, okay?
That's what a non-response means.
What we need that for? And then Tanya is not online tonight. Tanya didn't respond either. So, given Rick's response tonight, I will send out an email in the next couple days with the date that was most convenient here.
And I sent a bunch of materials out this afternoon.
To me or to everyone else?
I did.
So that's happening. And then lastly, Chris Benway, you would, in your central office report there, you mentioned pre-K. I know I gave you a hard time about that years ago when it first came out. So maybe before like the end of the summer, you can just give us a short summary on the status of that program, like the enrollment, the trajectory, the funding mechanisms, and I know it was supposed to improve certain things and help the transition of kids, and what are some of the results that we're seeing?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
All right, any other business? Anybody else?
So today, Walter, about talking to Patterson Home Institute about survey. I did reach out to Amanda Richardson, who used to be in the Purple Home Institute.
Is this for her?
For her evaluation, right?
Okay.
So in other words, somebody to look at our questions, make sure our questions are actually asking what we want them to ask, right? There's a way to ask questions in a survey to get results, and there's a way to get motives. And so she's willing to talk with us if we need to. If we want to contact with anybody, that would be Rich Collins. who was the head of the Rich Clark is the Fulton Institute. University, and he contracts and is happy to work with anybody about how to reach community outside of community. So like when we say it's community survey, right? Walter was kind of saying, hey, that's our school community and that's who we have access to, but we don't really have access to the community outside of that for polling, right? We don't have everybody's email addresses and ways to do that, but Polling Institute would. So just talking about, so just kind of put that in the back of your mind.
Okay.
We do have access to Castleton University's Polling Institute. We just need to talk about how we want it.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other business? For an executive session?
No, but we have to negotiate for
Yes.
this meeting after.
And that is an executive session.
That is something, 5-10%.
Agenda building, obviously we meet tomorrow night and then again on the 25th. Any big items that you want to,
No, I guess it depends on the outcome of the 13th.
which is Wednesday.
Which is Wednesday.
This Wednesday.
This Wednesday.
The day after tomorrow.
All right then, nothing else. This was a good discussion tonight, everyone. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?